What's up guys, Xygor here, and the Abattoir of Zir endgame just dropped for Diablo 4, and I've been playing the HOTA Barbarian like I have been most of the season, so I wanted to bring you this build guide, which is smashing through Abattoir of Zir, probably better than any other build in the game. This guide is going to help you to push your glyph up to 50, maybe further, so I'm going to get into the skills, the gear, the aspects, the skill tree, paragons, gems, the expertise to take, the Vampiric Powers, and just go from there. So this will be an all-encompassing guide to help you play this build and push your way through. So let's just get right into it, starting with the skills. So just real quick, we have all three shouts. We have Rallying Cry, War Cry, Challenging Shout, Wrath of the Berserker, and we have Ground Stomp. This is something we're adding into this build to give you both more damage and more mitigation. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And of course, Hammer of the Ancients, the bread and butter damage dealer of this build. As far as gear goes, you're going to want a Harlequin Crest or Shako. This is by far the best helm in the game. If you don't have that, the substitute helm is the Tusk Helm of Joritz the Mighty. You can still get by with this, and it's actually a pretty good helm, but Harlequin Crest is just going to give the best mitigation, the best damage, and it's just an incredible helm, so this is going to be the way to go. For chest, we want an all-out damage mitigation chest with Disobedience. I'm going with total armor, damage reduction from close, damage reduction from distant, and damage reduction while fortified. You can switch those up a little bit. For instance, you could go with straight damage reduction instead of like the distant or the fortified or the close, but this is a pretty good combination and a very good chest. You want that 66% disobedience for all the armor that you need. You want to get, you know, close to 15,000 armor when you're buffed if you can. With your gloves, you want attack speed, critical strike chance, lucky hit chance, and ranks of Hammer of the Ancients. I also have Relentless Berserkers here. This is an engine to keep yourself berserking, so you're doing a ton of damage. Lucky hit also helps keep that up, and it also helps keep up the Doombringer proc, which we'll talk about in a second. Tybalt's Will here. I played around with swapping this out for a pure damage mitigation pants like I have right here. This is a super great pants, but Tybalt's Will is just too good in terms of generating fury for you with Metamorphosis, which we'll talk about in a second, and also the damage that you get from Unstoppable. It's just an incredible pants that keeps you gaining fury even when you're losing it, because this build spends a ton of fury. With boots, I'm going a pure kind of damage and movement speed boots here. So I have movement speed, berserking duration, damage reduction while injured, and fury cost reduction with Ghostwalker. Now, this is great for grinding the Abattoir of Zir, but once you get into the higher tier sigils, you're going to want to drop this for a more resistance-oriented boots like this one. This one I plan to swap in when I'm getting close to, you know, the 20s. This is going to have lightning resistance, poison resistance, damage reduction while injured, and fury cost reduction. Alternatively, instead of poison, you can probably go with fire. I think those are the three best, lightning, poison, and fire. So that's what I like to have here. But yeah, this one is better for just going through and smashing and doing it super efficiently. With the two-handed mace, you want to have Limitless here up to 60%. For all of our weapons, where we can, we want all stats, strength, overpower damage, and damage while berserking. For one of our one-handers, we want to have the Ancestral Force aspect. Super good aspect that allows your Hammer of the Ancients to quake and do additional damage. This is a must-have. Doombringer, this is what we're putting in here, uber unique. If you're not lucky enough to have it, you could have a one-handed mace with Edge Masters is the aspect I would put here. But Doombringer is just so good because you're getting so much life, pretty good damage weapon, the ability to heal a little bit, which allows you to synergize into Tempered Fury, which we'll kind of discuss when we get into the skills, and also this lucky hit that does damage and reduces the damage of enemies. Grandfather here, the other uber unique that you have. If you can't get this, you would substitute for a two-handed sword or axe. with high damage and the same rolls we have, and you could go with Earth Strikers here. But Grandfather's just good for doing a ton of damage, and you're getting a ton of life out of it, so it's pretty much the best in slot. Melted Heart of Selig. This is probably the most must-have item in this build, also uber unique from Duriel. You gain 30 maximum resource, but whenever you take damage, you drain 3 resource for every 1% of life you would have lost instead. So this is one of the items that help us essentially be close to immortal. Now, you're not totally immortal with this build. You can actually die with it if you take damage quickly, but close enough, and we're just taking as many things as possible to work with this mechanic, stay alive while doing damage. Our first ring, Ring of Red Fury, does a lot of damage, and we're basically critical striking almost every single hit just because of this item. It's really great, and you want one as close to 30% as possible, and the most important stats are the maximum fury and the resource generation. So this one's reasonable. It always rolls with fire resistance. For ring, you want one with crit strike chance, damage while berserking, maximum fury, and resource generation. One of my best pieces. This is very well rolled, and you want it imprinted with unrelenting fury. Now, there are other options you can use here. You could use echoing fury to get 4 fury per second when you shout. There is the option of using that plus Bold Chieftains, but I like this setup the most so far. I'm going to be testing it a lot to see which is best, but I've had a better opportunity with this. Now, when I'm on bosses in the Abattoir of Zir, I swap in this ring. That is the Loop of Echoing Fury, and the reason is because this one doesn't give you a good benefit for the Bloodseekers, because they're technically not considered bosses, so you're not getting the core skill refunds there. But this, you are getting fury while your shots are active, which you're always shouting, so this is better for bosses. Every time, I shouldn't say bosses because they're technically not, but every time you get the Bloodseekers, I just swap this in quickly, finish the Bloodseekers, and swap it back. But this is going to be your typical one. Alright, with expertise, we are taking the axe here. We have the ability to make enemies vulnerable via metamorphosis and prey on the weak, which we will get into in the Vampiric Powers, but you want to take two-handed axe here if you're running this setup. For the gems, we have red gems in all of the armor pieces. This gives us more life. We're basically getting close to 30% life here. I have 28,522. Make a few adjustments, it can get closer to 30,000, but this is perfect for this build. For the weapons, you want red as well. This is going to give you additional overpower damage. And then for your jewelry, in the build guide in the description below, I have it as diamonds because that gives all resist, but you really want to use this in a way to get your resistances all up as balanced as possible. I think cold resist and shadow resistance are probably the two ones that are not as good as the 3 others, but I've tried to balance it out. So you basically have to see what you have on your jewelry. Some people's rings will have like poison or shadow, and balance it from there. Now again, if I was optimizing this run for very high sigil Abattoir of Zir, I would go with boots like this, so then my resistances would be higher. There's other ways to buff your resistances with incense as well. So, there we have it. Let's get into the skill tree here. Going to show you the skill tree, and again, build guide in the description below. That will have everything that I'm introducing you here, so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm putting 2 points into Lunging Strike, and you're not even using Lunging Strike. This is just to get to the next tier. There's 2 points prerequisite there. In the core skills, we're going Hammer of the Ancients all the way up. Then we're going Enhanced and Furious. Does a ton of damage. You need this. Next tier, we're actually going with Ground Stomp, then Enhanced Ground Stomp, and Strategic Ground Stomp. Now this one I want to talk about because this gives you a lot of extra damage because you're refreshing the Wrath of the Berserker all the time very quickly, especially when you Ground Stomp among tons of enemies. And the modifier with Wrath of the Berserker is just so good that it's a must-have. You could go with Iron Skin if you want more damage mitigation, but I'm having a way better time going with this Ground Stomp setup. If you're lacking in Fury, you could go this one, but I think Strategic Ground Stomp's just really good. 3 points in Imposing Presence, just more life. Then I have Rallying Cry, 1 point here, 1 point here, and then Tactical Rallying Cry. I have 1 point in Outburst and 1 point in Tough as Nails. What this does is essentially you're gaining some thorns, but you're really just trying to get this one because this makes all the enemies bleeding when they hit you. And because they're bleeding, that synergizes with one of the rare nodes that we're taking in our Paragon board that's really important. So this is good to take. It also synergizes with the Iron Blood aspect, so if you're running a pure damage mitigation pants with Iron Blood, this is what's going to push you up to the 20% damage reduction. And then we have Challenging Shout, 1 point here, down to Tactical Challenging Shout. This allows us to gain so much more fury because everything is hitting you so quickly. In these Abattoir of Zir runs, you're just going to get surrounded by things that hit you, and you'll gain a ton of fury. Alright, coming down to Brawling Skills, 1 point in War Cry, all the way to Power War Cry. Then we have 3 points in Booming Voice, just to have more shout durations, very important here. And then we have 3 points in Aggressive Resistance for more damage reduction, and 3 points in Prolific Fury for Fury generation. Next tier, we have Weapon Mastery Skills, 3 points in Pit Fighter, just more damage right there, and a little bit of damage reduction. 1 point in Thick Skin, and 2 points in Counteroffensive. I used to run this max, but because of this new setup, it's probably the one I thought I would take away 1 point from max, but it's still very good. Coming down here, ultimate skills, Tempered Fury and Invigorating Fury. So this is very important. So this one you're getting a little bit more max fury, but this one is so great because we're getting heals for 9% of our maximum life, which is 2,567 because we have a lot of life, for each 100 fury spent. Now you spend 100 fury in this build like it's nothing. You're constantly doing Hammer of the Ancients, which I think is 75 by default each Hammer of the Ancients. It's modified a little bit by my fury cost reduction, but you're spending it like crazy, super quick, healing up. This is really what makes this kind of close to an immortal barbarian. Very important. Then we have Wrath of the Berserker down to Supreme Wrath of the Berserker, and then we have Unbridled Rage. That's a must-have as well. Alright, Paragon trees. Let's go to the Paragon tree here. Paragon boards, I'm just going to talk pretty much glyph by glyph and what generally I'm doing here. Again, link in the description below will have the exact build guide with all these nodes. You can take a look at it. So first board here, we're going with Ire for more damage while berserking and a little bit of reduced damage from elites. Very good one here, multiplicative bonus, it's fantastic. Going north here, this is the board where we're going to take Tears of Blood. This is the new glyph that we get that's super ultra powerful, where for every 5 core stats purchased within the range, you get, by default, 2% increased damage. Of course, that scales as you level it, and grants 50% bonus to all rare nodes. Scales as well. I have mine at level 10 already. When you get this to level 50, which by the way should take a long time, but this build is good at getting it, probably the best build at getting that, your radius will expand one way. So that's when we would expand this a bit, but right now I'm going for one in which your glyph isn't yet 50. So heading westward, we're going with Martial here. Martial's going to keep our skills up more because they're reduced for 1.2 seconds every time we use one. We are also getting the Raw Power node and the Iron Strength node here. Forgot to mention on this board, we're getting Cold Condition. This gives us some cold resist. Then we're getting Fierce here. Again, scales with the bonus. We're getting Brash here. Then we're going north for Enraged. Just more damage there. North to the next board here, we are getting Bulwark, Tenacity, and we're getting Bone Breaker. So this one's fantastic. Every 12 seconds your next skill is guaranteed to overpower, and this build kind of revolves around gathering enemies together, berserking, unleashing your overpower, then stomping to reduce the cooldowns, then keep going, and you can basically time it so every 12 seconds you're doing a ton of damage. Going northward, we have Brutality and Xygor, and then we have Crusher. Crusher, very high damage node that we're taking here. The north, we are getting Blood Rage, and we are getting Enraged. Blood Rage is so good in this build because not only are enemies bleeding now because of the tough as nails, we are also getting a ton more damage while because of our damage while berserking bonus. So this one's just really good. It's a must-have. And then down here, eastward, we're going to get Wrath here, more critical strike damage, and we're getting more fury from our critical strikes, which is, again, all the time. Almost all of our hits are critical strikes because of the Ring of Red Furor and how that scales. We're also getting Raw Power, and we are getting Conditioned. We are getting Core Reserve, and we are getting Warbringer. Warbringer, fantastic here. This is kind of our Fortified Generation battery. So like I said, when we expand this radius by getting Tears of Blood to 50, that's when we'll want to take points away from some of the other areas of the Paragon board and put them here. So we would take this one, etc. So the ones I would take away first would be these ones here, because we would still have the prerequisite here. So basically like these 4 right here and some others, but maybe I'll do a guide about that in the future. But once you get it to 50 radius, you're really going to want to fill this in. Alright, Vampiric Powers. Let's go to the Vampiric Powers here. You actually have some choices here, but the ones that I'm going with are Prey on the Weak. This keeps enemies vulnerable, allows us to make enemies vulnerable, and gives us additional damage. Now, because of the synergy with Metamorphosis here, or Prey on the Weak and Metamorphosis, Tybalt's Will, we can leap through enemies, we become unstoppable, they become vulnerable, and it's fantastic. And I'll talk about Metamorphosis. This allows us to spread the curse to the enemies via Unstoppable, via Tybalt's Will. So really important not only for movement and kind of agility here, it allows us to leap through enemies, put the curse on them, and it makes them vulnerable. Resilience, super amazing damage reduction ability here. Resilience allows us to get so much damage reduction, especially as we get low life. If you're close to dying, this will save your butt a lot. Then we have Blood Boil here. This gives you overpower every 20 seconds, so it's an additional overpower that you wouldn't get otherwise, plus a little bit of AoE damage from the blood drops that you can touch and then they explode on enemies. Last one, Domination here. This one's just another modifier to stun, immobilize, frozen, or feared enemies. We're stunning enemies all the time because of Ground Stomp, which only has an 11.77 cooldown based on the gear I have. So you're doing that all the time, so they're stunned a lot. And if they're injured and not an elite, they're just instantly killed. It's like an execution. So this one's really good. This is the one you could switch out if you want for like Sanguine Brace. If you want more mitigation, you could go Undying. There's a few other choices you can go, but I like Domination here. Alright, so that's the basics of the build. Let me just show you real quick a quick tutorial about how to play this. Alright, Abattoir of Zir here. We found a bunch of elites, so right then I did Wrath of the Berserking and I ground stomped to get that cooldown back. So basically I'm just hitting things in groups mostly. There's kind of some times that you'll want to bypass mobs and get to the next clump. There's an opportunity there to do a bunch. This is an area where I probably might not want to focus on that and might want to run, but I got them, so there they go. Ground Stomp, get Wrath of the Berserker back, here we go. Every 12 seconds and every 20 seconds you're getting overpowers, and I'm one-shotting a lot, but as it gets higher you're not going to be able to do that as much. So we're just racing through here. 1 minute down, I'm about 50% in. You want to leap to get Fury back when you need it. And basically go from there. You will have to do multiple attacks sometimes as well. Watch your health, but you're pretty immortal in this setup. Just gonna run from those. There's not enough there. Prey on the weak there. Ground Stomp, get the Wrath of the Berserker, do more damage. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. Move right along because there's not enough for it to be beneficial. Blast Wave is really ridiculously good in this, so you're going to do a lot of damage from that. Always make use of those. Conduit's not as good in this build. You can clear enemies, but it really sucks on the boss. I shouldn't say boss again. The Bloodseekers are not bosses, but there we go. Clear that out. We got the Conduit, so we'll just do the rest of the damage on the regular enemies, and we're going to get the Bloodseekers here. Alright, I'm going to switch my ring in like I talked about earlier. This might end up finishing them or close. But there we go. Otherwise, you're just going to overpower. So that's basically it. I swap my ring in, so I'm swapping my ring back. We want the Echoing Fury for the Bloodseekers and this one for the normal ones. So that's about it, guys. There's the build guide. Again, link in the description below. We'll have the planner and everything you need for this. This is a super powerful guide and super powerful build. This is probably the most powerful spec in the game right now, so give it a try. It can definitely be optimized, and remember, this is for a speed farming efficiency setup. There are adjustments you can do once you get into the higher tiers. Let me know how you've optimized it. If you found something you think that is going better for you than I have in this guide, let me know in the comments below. And please also like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Diablo 4 content.